wow, this is what we've been missing within the engineering curriculum. And it was just amazing how many things I'd read and be like, yes, that's exactly what we do, and to see that sort of expressed clearly.
Taken with the colours, a bit overwhelming. There were a lot of words, a lot of terms I didn't really understand.
How to view the students and how to see whereabouts they were kind of in this kind of critical thinking framework and whereabouts on kind of the scale they were. And so it allowed you to see areas that you could really stress to them. If they were weak in certain areas, there was quite a clear distinction from that framework as to where the students were and how you could actually develop the skills in kind of a logical and kind of a cohesive way throughout that framework.
Found myself reflecting a lot upon my initial studies in engineering.
Our end product, depending on our effort and contribution, would affect the next generation of student engineers.
Very exciting at the time to kind of get all these pieces of the courses that we had been studying and that we were teaching and that we had yet to study, and to actually see how those really fitted in neatly into the RSD to actually form that OPS framework.
Being able to have something that is visually appealing as well as a model that they can refer to and follow, which applies to not just communication but all sort of different facets of engineering and beyond, is definitely an exciting thing to have the opportunity to use.
We used it as part of our planning process of putting everything together in terms of the course, and then we used it every lesson and we showed them how it would enable them to get over that blank page syndrome.
It was an excellent teaching aid. So as tutors, when you're trying to teach problem solving and the thinking like an engineer, it was much easier to show them something visually and that they could look at, but also have in front of them at all times to follow if they needed to or refresh their memory.
There was a great shift. Initially it was a lot of end product focus, where it's the report, it's a final presentation, and students just get bored because it's just like an English course in their head. But since the implementation of the OPS, it has become more technically challenging in the sense that we're teaching you a skill, we're teaching you a problem-solving skill that can be applied to any engineering project. And now reports and presentations are no longer the end product, it's just part of the process.
When they talk to the tutors, in a sense they could almost say in advance where the tutors were going to show them, and they'd sort of go, oh yes, and we'd show them one or two bits and they'd suddenly go, no, we've got it, and then they could go back to that. So actually it was a really efficient use of time as well.
In lectures we've gone through case studies and broken it down using OPS, just highlighting to them that NASA engineers, for example, the way they problem solved their problems is exactly reflected by the OPS. So it shows them what they're learning in theory isn't just theory, it's being used in the real life. It's just that they're not aware of it. We're just highlighting to them there is a structure, and because you're new engineers, you have to refer to the structure. And once you're seasoned or experienced engineers, it's just going to be second nature.
First, a simple framework that was very easy to understand, that you could then refer back to when talking about all of these kind of engineering concepts and problem-solving kind of ideas. Adaptable to different circumstances, and so
initially I didn't probably give it as much consideration as I should have, but as the semester progressed I sort of opened up to it a fair bit more.
It was actually really helpful because I often find it really hard to just start a problem. So when you actually, with the OPS, you just write out the sentence and it tells you what your problem is, and then you can go through each of the 5 outer sections and make sure that you cover every aspect of your problem so you fully understand what's going on.
And when you encounter problems, it's nice to go back to something that you're familiar with. You always have something to rely on.
Well, every small group discovery that we had, the OPS was related, and we had a laminated picture of OPS in front of us so that we could analyse each problem with OPS.
It's definitely become a permanent part of my mental structure, just in the way I approach problems. You can go back to the start, and if you're having trouble, you know what areas you can look at. It is really great.
Whenever you get stuck, you go back to it define what the problem is, then work it out and then go from there. It sort of gives you a bit of a guideline where to start, how you're going to go about it. Use it as a way to sort of overcome difficulties that you come across along the way. Sometimes you don't even know that you're using, but you really are.
The success of teaching OPS now will really show in those later years. How can we get students to be a little bit more analytical in their problem solving, and rather than just regurgitating what other people have said, is using that OPS structure to really critically analyse a problem, to go through, to generate ideas, to evaluate those ideas and then come back and communicate those ideas. I'd like to see that as more of a focus.
They become more independent and self-sufficient with the introduction of this problem solving section in the first year communication course. I would say keep going at it. It's made a great impact on the students.
What we did this year was we sort of introduced it, but then let them explore it on their own as part of the small groups. And I think there might have been, it might not have been utilised to its full extent by some students because they were concentrating on trying to complete their assignment or their workshop project. And although you could use it to help, if you weren't already familiar with it, it may have been something else that they needed to worry about. So I think implementing it a little bit earlier into the coursework would definitely, will be interesting to see if it did make a difference.
I think embed it even more explicitly and really show how it's embedded within the workbook. An opening image of it at the beginning of each lecture to show how the lecture itself will unpack. And that should make it really, really clear.
I do actually really like it because it's nice to just have that visual aid, so you don't have to think, oh my goodness, this is a big problem, what am I supposed to do? You just sort of know, okay, well I can just try this, I'll start, and it just helps you start your process. Yeah, and it flows on and it's not such a hard thing to approach the problem.
I think it's really good to sort of introduce OPS earlier in your engineering degree. It would have even been great to sort of learn about OPS maybe even earlier throughout schooling and stuff. The earlier that you can start maximising your potential. If I went back and did Year 12 now after what I've learned this year, I'd be so much better prepared. I would have gone about things a whole completely different way.
Yeah, like some beatbox or like a...